What's up, squad? It's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wanted to talk on the subject of Europe being at a crossroads. You know, as of last week, when President Trump dropped the bombshell, he's talking to Vladimir Putin, and he's doing it in a as the politicians say, the Democrats said it this way: the war can be over in a day, as Trump said. All you gotta do is just give up everything. And it looks that's what Trump is doing. I haven't grasped entirely his foreign policy. He is West leaning, of course, but he's reached out regarding weapons and arms reduction to save money. He may be a president that really just wants peace on a global scale, or he may be a president that has a great appreciation for authoritarianism and regional power centers. So when he talk about arms reduction, he's going to who he sees as his competitor or peer powers, relatively peer powers to America, and that's China and Russia. And both of those countries are going to come with a great swath of area for which they are their respective hegemon. These are the great military powers. All three of these countries are on the UN Security Council. 305 countries on the UN Security Council. But it's almost, when he say he's going to lower arms reduction, the defense spending, of course it's much needed for the American balance sheet. But what he's also saying is we can respect each other's space. It kind of makes me go back to the shipping agreement in the early 20th century, where Britain can have so many ships, and Japan can have so many ships. Japan can have like 3 ships in the Pacific. America have 5 ships, but they're going to keep a half in the Pacific, half in the Atlantic, type of thing. Where the powers came together, which didn't last long, they still had 2 wars, but the powers came together. They was trying to figure out a balance on power and respecting of each other's fears. And that's where it comes down with Trump going out with Russia and China. He's saying, first, like, do you hear what he said about Ukraine? He said they might be Russian in the future. Like the overture, I mean, it is like he's bending over backwards. This is a limbo bend. Just these and the Ukrainians, of course, and President Zelensky has came out and he said, what else could he say? Is that like we're just not going to let you tell us what to do? Deep down, everybody knows America is what's sustaining Ukraine. Americans leadership is what's sustaining Ukraine right now. But the battle of Ukraine is so much more. So right now, what Russia's talking about basically conceding space, because I think he's a Western leaning leader. He does believe in Western supremacy, but he's also recognizing these other powers in the world and trying to come to a sort of Pax Americana or age of peace with them and lowering defense spending. And what that's going to do is basically concede to them their power ambition. Because he say, I'll come down with you guys, And basically saying he's not going to try to take what they have and assuming that they may not try to take what they have, which I think is absurd. I think when Putin get out of this, which it looked like he might do due to President Trump, he'll be a fool not to try to get his tentacles around Europe, because it was so, the way they ostracized him and the way they cut him off in the markets, he would never want to be that vulnerable again. I think that was the direction he was already moving in the early 2000s, and that got disrupted with the war in Ukraine. But I think he's going to be even more fervent because he's going to want to make sure that he's so integrated he won't be able to get cut out from global markets again. So, but Trump says, okay, this is the direction he wants to go into. So now what do we do with Europe? Now Europe is a very unique and interesting continent, if you can call it that. I don't, it's Eurasia to me, but for academic purposes, Europe is a continent. I always say Europe exists as a consequence of Asia. What we know of Europe now is the peoples of Central Eurasia who were harassed over millennia, over centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries by Asian raiders, we would say, whether we're talking Huns or Scythians, Mongols, whatever you want to call. There is a close approximation to the domestication of the horse and European migration. And a lot of that to do with the wide open spaces of Central Asia, um, or Central Eurasia, as they're seeing now, right? These flat fields that we've seen in the Russia-Ukraine war, it sits right there in this area. And a lot of Europeans moved into Europe to get away from this chaos, get away from this violence, and then they ran out until they can go no further because they ran into the Atlantic Ocean. Then, of course, there are some that went to the British Isles, Iceland, etc. Now, Europe, when cut off, under this pressure, Europe had adopted a life of saying, okay, guys, we're not going to be the biggest and strongest. And they emphasize the honing or the making of excellence the small, right? And I think that's always been Europe's great strength, right? Is their competitiveness, which they had to do because of their density. But that competitiveness created a lot of suffering, but it also created a lot of creativity. And you see so much modernization and pushing the boundaries with the European. The European, there's a lot of things that the European didn't create in itself, but they took small things such as um, navigational tools from Asia, and they colonized the world with it. You know, Asia had these navigational tools, but Europe took it, honed it, and colonized the world with it. They took science and mathematics to a whole other level. When they were cut off from Asian markets, they took shipping to a whole other level. They took risk. And of course, they had to take risk because of their precarious situation, being surrounded by stronger powers always. Whether we're talking about the Asian horse riders, such as Mongols, we're talking about the Islam. When Islam came of age, Europe surrounded by Islam, the Ottomans in the east, the Moors to the south. But Europe took their chances. They were tenacious in their defense, which is why they weren't fully conquered, right? We could thank Vienna for that against the Ottomans. You could take Spain for that against the Moors on the peninsula. But Europe, since World War II, the downside of this, obviously, is violence. Europe has been one of the most efficiently violent continents in the history of man through numerous wars, numerous conquests, because of the idea of trying to centralize power. And Europe's geography and its decentralization never being to the degree of, say, a China, where it allowed a comprehensive conquest of the entire continent. And even if it did to a certain degree, it was too late. You had countries such as the United Kingdom, which pretty much their whole interest is a divided Europe. The United Kingdom interest has always been a divided Europe. Hence, you get countries like Belgium. Like if you look at the countries, so many countries on the edges of Europe, the continent. There's no coincidence that England had a strong force in their creation. Whether you're talking Belgium, you're talking Portugal, you're talking Greece, you're talking about security guarantees to Poland, like the corners of the continent. And the reason why is because Europe wanted to make sure there would never be complete conquest. And they needed beachheads where they can land or they can deliver forces or allied forces to get on that continent when need be, or they can put barriers in front of would-be conquerors. Right? This has always been a strategy. Find somewhere, set up camp, consolidate that. Whether you're talking about Southern Africa, whether you're talking about Northern Ireland, or these countries in Europe I spoke about, but they established a beachhead and they build out from there. Now, and then whenever there would seem like it would be a conqueror such as a Napoleon or a Hitler, that would unify the continent. There was Britain bringing in allies, making sure that this would never happen. So as I'm talking about Europe, I want to make sure you understand that I'm referencing continental Europe. Now, if you believe in a strong Europe, now when Europe, after World War II, Europe was like, okay, guys, we went level 10. Let's calm down. That And between the number that Hitler had ran on Europe, the Soviet Union had ran on Europe, the continent was just devastated, right? And then America came in with its blanket, and then Soviet Union and United States split the continent, of course, with the Iron Curtain. Now, ever since World War II, people can say Europe kind of lost its luster to some degree. And it's numerous reasons. They've been kind of reticent due to their violent past, their aggression. There's not that many places in the world you can go there. There's not a European language that have touched there because of colonialism, because of their voracious nature to explore and conquer. Um, and I wouldn't say conquer, I'll say acquire. So there's not that many places in the world you can go where Europeans haven't touched. They took pride in it. Each one had their own type of flavor and their zeal. Whether British in commerce, Germans through warfare, French through culture. Each one of them had like their flavor they want to put on the world, and they fought each other to add this flavor to the world. And after World War II, you seen consolidation, but you also seen it kind of took it kind of took the veracity out of Europe. And they had a great run economically, I believe, in the late 90s, early 2000s, under German leadership. And because remember, but people don't, you have to admit, Germany is the heart of Europe, continental Europe, always has been from an industrial point of view in the modern era. And again, when the German states unified, it's been on ever since, as they say. But what happened is you have this economic leader that refuse any military acknowledgement. These guys don't pay their NATO fees. They bet on the welfare state. They're sabotaging themselves with not liking coal and all these various things that they've done. Pretty much every anti-competitive act, and they've been selling on past glories for a few decades now. And even when they had a good run. A lot of that good run was balanced by offset of poor performing European countries. So a lot of the Mediterranean countries were really maligned for what they felt as though they were poor fiscal management. And you only had a country like Germany that was really pulling the weight of Europe. You have France right now, oh glorious days. Look at the freaking, how bad has France managed its colonies? How bad? When you look at a country like Britain, who is growing, Britain is acquiring former French colonies in the British Commonwealth. They're recognizing the Queen as a leader, or the King as a leader now. So France has done a horrible job, and now Trump is telling them, hey guys, I'm about to sue for peace in Ukraine. Ukraine, which has basically embraced their Europeanness as opposed to their Russianness, and basically saying we're going to defend Europe here against Russia, which they may see as the other. And America's just like, no, we're going to, not only are we not going to keep this charade going, Ukraine, we're not going to include you at the table. We're not going to include Europe at the table, and it's just going to be us and Russia to start this off. And then when we get comfortable with things, we might open the door and let you in. I really think there was a recent meeting right now with European leaders in Paris under Macron. And I don't know if Macron is the guy that can make this stuff happen. But nevertheless, if you believe in a strong Europe, Trump probably the best thing that ever happened to him, because I think this is a shakeup right now. They just got a speech. They just got talked down to by Trump's Secretary of Defense. Trump's VP were over there telling them, they talking down to these guys, saying, hey guys, ideas, we need bullets, we need weapons when wars you can't shoot, morals and virtues. So it really is a wake-up time for Europe to see what they want to be. And like, who knows, can Europe be energetic? This continent has grown old and stale. Why do you think they need so many migrants? They sit here and they complain about these illegal migrants. But who's going to work for them? Like, who's going to support these welfare states? Where are they grabbing youth from? Countries like Italy and Germany have some of the worst demographics in the world. And this is always a judge of the trajectory of the country. Like, these Europeans don't even have children anymore. So where else are they going to get the people that's going to support the welfare state? You can't have your cake and eat it too. So of course, I've been a lot of far right groups on the rise, as you can say, or I'll say European nationalist groups, and you'll see if they'll get traction or not. But nevertheless, Europe is at a crossroad. It has to decide what it's going to be. Is it a carcass? Is its best days behind it? Like I think of like an old elephant or something like that. Like you've reached this height of maturity, and and now there's nothing else to do but because there's no further growth and you're getting older and weaker. And now you're just becoming prey to the young, energetic lions that surround you. So Europe has to understand, are they that? Or is Europe still that lion? And does Europe still want to compete on products, on ideas, on culture, the things that they'll need to compete in this world, to grab markets, to grow their economies and provide a good quality of life to their people. So I'm really interested to see where Europe goes next. But I really think this is a challenge. This is a gut check for them to say, who are we and who do we want to be? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Comment below. If you have any insight or opinion, you like what I thought, you don't like what I thought, I'd love to hear your point of view. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.